I'd like to welcome Gretel Zamora Estrada. Gretel, please turn on your camera, join us. Gretel is the Innovation and Transformation Leader in Government. She was the former Innovation and Technology Director of the Ministry of Economy and Finance in Panama. She has been leading transformation projects since 2000 at General Electric. She led LATAM transformational processes at Dell and has been working on projects that impact Panama and the Panama Canal, hub of the Americas. Today, she'll share with us her experience with government transition, COVID, and other crises at the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Gretel, real pleasure to have you with us to talk about, not only transformation, but transformation in difficult environments where there is government and there are politics, and how do you drive transformation environments like that amidst pandemic and crisis. So this should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you very much, Joe. And yes, this is a very interesting story that I want to share, the journey of transformation. I wanted to take some time, and thank you very much for the invitation. I wanted to take some time to share how do you manage turbulence and deliver results during transition times and crisis and disruptions, because that's not something that no one teaches you how to handle crisis. It's not something that it's taught in MBA schools as entry level. It's later on you become good at it by other things. So the main topic is how to manage turbulence while you deliver results during transitions and disruptions. Okay. This journey, as you see, it's a train that's boarding the train. It talks about how you drive innovation and you transform government services. In this case, it was the Ministry of Economy. It was all the part of economy, finance, handling the money of a country, and which in the Panama budget is 27 billion for this year. First of all, I joined the ministry as a consultant, dealing with all the government transition, getting the direction I was in, the innovation and technology direction ready. And the most important thing is, how do you get ready for a transition, a government transition, or it can be new company taking over, it can be a buyout. There are many transitions. There's a new boss, there's a new CEO. There's always transitions, there's always change. There's an organized way to manage that. So first of all, you have to acknowledge the fear and the pain. People are dealing with fear, they're dealing with pain, they don't know what to do. And a lot of times, and the biggest concern is that people are afraid they're going to lose their jobs. So I will say, deal with the change. Acknowledge that it's not easy. Once you are able to tell people, yeah, this is, it can be complicated, then you will end up getting the buy-in from them. And also be very, very, very exclusive.
Hi, Gretel. Your presentation came off of presentation mode. I think you must have hit the escape key, so your PowerPoint is not in presentation mode now. So if you can launch that again.
Now it's working?
Yeah, now it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So also to be very inclusive, in order to get 100 people and 3,000 users ready for the transition, I had roundtables with the 100 people that were impacted, as well as all the key customers, to make sure that we understood where we were and what we needed to do, and that we listened to the people, because a lot of the times, as I explained to them, and I'll go into that in the next slide, there are limited things you can do, but people can feel heard, and they can also feel that you are giving them as much information as you have. This is my favorite framework of all times. It's the circle of control, the circle of influence, and the circle of concern. Circle of control is, what can I do? Circle of influence is, what can I influence that I don't directly control, but that could help me get the outcome that I want? And the circle of concern is, or for me, it's out of control, so I don't have to concern about it. It's things that I have no control of. For example, we had a group that was dealing with a very expensive ERP, and they were concerned that their job was going to go away, the system was going to go away. And I told them, okay, what can you control? You can control being on time, you can control knowing your stuff, being responsible, having the knowledge. So even if the system changes, you can stay on and the impact will be minimal. What can you influence? You can influence in providing cases of why it will be very difficult to make the change. And what you cannot control if the new government decides they don't want the system. So because you cannot control it, you cannot waste time in the red zone because you're wasting your time. So we need to really focus on the green area, which is the circle of control. And that's not only for big changes like that, but even I use it as a framework. Whenever a problem landed in my desk, I will go ahead and say, okay, what can I do about it? What can I influence indirectly? Everything else, it's out of my control. I let it go because there's so many problems in large organizations. You don't have time to concern over every single little thing. The transition gift package, I think that was very, very interesting because you have to go ahead and share with people how was the organization before. It's like a gift you're giving. What are you giving the next person? No. So these are some of the elements that should be considered and included. One is done. What has been done? What did you do? You know, anytime you're doing a handover transition, what did you do? Completed to 100%. What's pending? What's at a 50, 75% that needs to be done quickly? The risk, you need to share what the risks are so that they know to avoid crisis. And in some cases, the crisis is there and you just have to deal with it. What are the most important priorities? Because again, when new management or new leadership takes control, how are they going to know what's more important? You give them 10 things, but then you have to say 1, 2, 3 is this, and then the rest you go step by step, because otherwise it's so overwhelming, nothing gets done. Who are your key people? You need to provide the new leadership. Who are the people, the 30% or 40% of the movers and shakers that make everything work? The new leadership needs to know that. One, to save their jobs in case there's any reorganizations, because you don't know what's going to happen. And second, because they keep the place running, no? Recommendations. You need to tell them what you think are the next steps. And then they can decide what they're going to do. But you cannot do all this work and then don't give a recommendation, because at the end, it's kind of doing the whole due diligence. And finally, the financials. Sometimes people think, okay, I'm giving a department that's not a finance department, but anyway, you have to come up with all the numbers, the budgets, and then transition that in a transparent manner to the next person. And all that, it's to avoid having crisis. And sometimes in the package, there's crisis. In my package, I had a few crises handed to me. I can't, Joe, I can't go to the next page.
Yeah, try to click on it because sometimes it's where your cursor is. There you go.
Okay, great, okay. So, as I was talking about financials, the gift I had in this project or in this transition was that I only had 5 million left in the budget, yet there were 15 million money owed at least. So the deficit was 10 million. So when that's the situation, when you have something that are really bad news, because this is really bad news, this is the worst news I've ever had in my whole entire life in any business units, just come out and just see. I put it there. It's very graphic. People can see what's going on, right? So just tell the story, bad news as soon as possible, because what that gives is that whenever we talk about risk, it gives the alert of what's wrong, so the organization can help and prioritize this risk over something else. And at the same time, now that you gave all this transition information, go over your new bosses, the new leadership priorities, select what what are the critical things for them, because they are going to be different to the ones that you had and the recommendations, because you're coming with a mindset from before. Now it's new. And then based on the issues they have, their needs they have, you offer solutions because you have knowledge of the organization they do not have. After that, that's when I say you have to show your target, or where are you going. You have to write a vision board and come out with a plan. In my case, we created a plan. I created a plan with all the different leaders of my direction, of the innovation direction, and we spent 2 days just working on the plan. So it was a joint plan. It was a joint effort, and everybody felt that we did what we were going to do. It was a common idea. We did 2 different approaches. One, the year plan, and then we had the 100-day plan, because in government, a lot of times you do the first 90-day plan, or 100 days is in government. And we use a stretch approach, which we ask for impossible. Everybody signed up for impossible things. That's something I learned at GE under Jack Welch. And we didn't accomplish 100% of what we said, but we accomplished a lot more than we will have originally accomplished if we had just done traditional planning using time and very conscious, with a lot of conscience. And the lesson learned is that when you have momentum, you can do things like that. Do the stretch, but you cannot run an organization on a stretch for the long term. It's something you do for certain times. And transition is beautiful. During COVID, if you can run an organization on stretch, it's beautiful. If you can manage that, taking care of the people side, of course. The next, how do you handle your first crisis? Remember, I was sharing that with you. I had approximately 5 to 7 big crises. They didn't make it to the newspaper, thank you, Lord. But in this situation, the priority when the office was taken by the new leadership was paying debts. We had to pay $2 billion of debt from the previous government. And I saw this news, the new president took over disorganized disaster. Truly, there's no better way to describe what the inheritance was. And we had to pay debts, but they were going to interrupt the payment system because the contract was overdue. So it was an administrative matter. I got a phone call at 9 p.m. at home from the vendor. I used negotiation and just leveraged the relationship. And then I did a lot of teamwork. One is building goodwill is important with vendors and all the different people that work with you. I partnered with the treasurer department. So innovation and treasurer work together to get all the different work done. Make it a priority and create win-win scenarios. We created a contract for the new vendor that helped them through the whole to recover all the losses they had, and at the same time we were able to reactivate. And then your reputation needed to be preserved. When you're dealing with Fortune 500s, government, the whole reputational risk is very, very high, and it can actually shut down a company or shut down a billion-dollar product. So in this case, we managed it very quietly, and we were able to accomplish a solution without interrupting the service. So that was a first win. It's important to get wins early on. That's really critical. And that's what we did in this situation. At the same time, you have in the short term and then long term. In the short term, you have, I had, as I mentioned, 5 mega fires. You have to turn them into quick wins. One of the incidents I had, we had a cyber attack. I had some maintenance issues in the servers where I had my server farm almost not working for 2-3 days. We almost lost 100% of the information. God, Yeah, that's just an example of some of the things that happen. So you have all these mega fires. So at the same time you have that, you have to turn it into quick wins, and then also do quick wins, which are go back to originally what the new leadership told you. For example, we help create new process and procedures for the whole minister office. And we were able to do that because we had the innovation, the process, business excellent approach, and really partner with all the different sectors, all the different leaders to give them what they needed, create solutions to their business needs when they were coming into a new organization. So you balance the fighting fires with the quick wins and make the every risk you turn it into an opportunity of how you handle it. Then on the other side, you have the long term. It's important to do the capability, create capability in the organization. When we had to do that, we had to make sure that the whole organization, we were 100 people on core, knew what were the next steps and what to do. What was the training? Provide them with training so they could go to the next level, because we were transitioning from a bits and bytes organization to a more innovation where you manage project and the technical part is only 20% of what you do. Sharing the vision. I will have every month, I will have training for them every month for the team. One was technical, one was administrative, and I will be in any one of those trainings, sharing with them for half an hour what's the vision. I will always had a space where I connected with the 100 people in my direction every month. So it was very, very important that they felt I was close, I had open doors, and they could come up to me and speak their minds, say what they like, say what they didn't like, and bring up ideas. Most of the ideas were beautiful. They were things that needed to be done, and they were the right people to quickly implement them. Honoring the culture, the birthdays, we had a very strong culture of the birthdays, and it's important to assign people to the long-term issues, because when you have all these fires in the short term, you sometimes don't accomplish the things in the long term. And what worked for me there was having dedicated resources to the long term, and that's what helped the most in order to accomplish the things such as setting up the organization, setting up roles, responsibilities, procedures of the new way to work, setting new budgets, just setting up all the administrative stuff. That was very critical. Okay, how you manage transition times. Obsessive participation of everyone. I'm going to repeat it. Obsessive participation of all. I never worked on my own. I don't recall ever, except maybe half an hour a day, I was on my own. The rest of the time, I was always with other people, and we were always listening to others. Very important to cascade info down. I will pass on information 1 to 2 business days at the most. So everybody knew what was going on in direction and in the ministry. What was the overall direction? Every time there was a change, it was cascade down. And besides me moving that down to the leaders or the managers, they got cascaded down every Friday in a weekly meeting to all the different staff. So we were always touching the 100 people. Everybody was clear. Transparency. I had a monitor in front of my office that projected outside. So anything I was doing, anyone in my office could see what I was working on. And I did it on purpose to make sure that everybody understood the message of transparency. That's the way we work. We do things the right way. Humility, really listen. I was in a very, I had to be humble because I had just arrived to the ministry in January, and then in July I get promoted. So it's 5-6 months, and everybody in my team had 10, even 30 years of experience in the ministry. So I had to be humble and really listen to them and find out from their knowledge what we could do to get in the new vision of what we needed to do, which was innovation. Participating in innovation, I mentioned that, and accountability. Really, yeah, in government, you sometimes do, you have to do write-offs, which I hadn't done since when I was in factories in the 90s. But sometimes you have to do write-offs. I did it as nicely as I could, but there's some accountability that needs to happen when there's changes, because you need to make sure that everyone is aligned in the right way. And that only occurs after you have done verbal warnings, But accountability is also having the meetings every 2 weeks of where is everyone going, where do you need help, making sure that you're running a tight ship. Okay, so then after all that story, you go in, and on March 9, I think, we had the first coronavirus death. Very, very interesting. You're operating under high uncertainty. You have to provide recommendations to the minister of what to do for 3,000 people. We had to set up telework for 1,000 people in a week and create a plan for 3,500 telework in a weekend. So partnering with vendors, as I mentioned before, managing the fear. I had someone come to my office and tell me, you want to be here? And I had him close the door, and I told him, yeah, nobody wants to be here. It's a situation, and I explained to him, I compare it with 9/11, which now looking in hindsight maybe wasn't the best, but that was all I had. I told him, situations like this, no one wants to be here. Everybody wants to be home with your family and safe. But for some reason, you ended up in a job where you have very, very high stakes in the national economy. So we have to be here providing support to the technology for everybody, so everybody can go and work from home. We need to do that for a month or 2 weeks at least. And the only way to get through all these changes is take care of all the different safety distancing, all the hygiene, and pray, and also do what you need to do for the time you need to do. And then after, when we finish doing what we need to do, think of all you're giving back to your country, so motivating them, but also being when I will go to the office where you can be doing telework and take care of people. I sent everybody home on March 12th before it was announced in the news that the people were going into lockdown, just because I made the call. I didn't ask anyone, and I didn't care. I need to take care of my people. And that meant everybody going home and working remote. And they did that for almost 3 months. And setting up telework for 1,000 people, because then you have to, while you're doing things, you have to deliver results. And that's what we do. Last but not least, when you're handling a lot of situations that are difficult, because we mentioned before, it had a disorganized disaster, you make something in your government or your ministry may make the front page of a newspaper. When that happens, the first thing is you panic. And after that, you go ahead and talk
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It looks to me that that Gretel had a problem with her transmission as she was going through her presentation. She may have had an interruption in her service. So we apologize for that. She was building on the real challenges that you have on doing cultural transformation in the government sector. And amidst political changes, and then on top of that, as you saw from her presentation so far, multiple crises. We're gonna work with Gretel on her transmission, but at this point, we'll wrap up this segment, and we'll introduce the next segment that's going to take place at the top of the hour. And at the top of the hour, we're gonna have Karen Tylstra and Andy Tylstra talking about creating cultures that create. Dr. Karen Tylstra is an expert in the area of cultural creation and cultural transformation, and she's going to be sharing with us what are the best approaches from not only a theoretical standpoint, but from a very practical standpoint. How do you create a culture that is creative, that is innovative, and of course, that's creating value for society and for the organization? You do not want to miss that. Karen and Andy Tylstra at the very top of the hour. We look forward to seeing you then. Remember, you can follow up on all of these presentations at the LinkedIn profiles that we have shared with you during the presentations, and you can ask questions there. We'll follow up on those questions as well. And at the top of the hour, we'll meet Karen and Andrew on how to create cultures that create. As you exit the session, there is opportunity to provide feedback, and that we'll see you at the top of the hour. Thank you very much.